The mahogany table gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights of the boardroom. Mr. Abernathy, a man whose suit appeared pressed by lasers and whose hair defied gravity, was mid-sentence, laying out a complex merger strategy. His voice, usually a smooth baritone that commanded attention, suddenly hitched. His eyes widened, not in enlightenment, but in fear. He gripped the edge of the table, knuckles white against the polished wood. A low groan escaped his lips, a sound so unlike the composed lawyer that several board members exchanged worried glances. Then, the inevitable, Abernathy slumped forward, his meticulously organized notes scattering like fallen leaves. The carefully constructed image of perfection shattered in an instant as he began to convulse on the floor. Panic erupted. Someone yelled for security, another for a doctor. The air filled with the confused murmurings of the shocked executives. Abernathy's perfectly tailored suit, now rumpled and stained, was a stark contrast to the chaos surrounding him. Later, in the sterile environment of Princeton Plainsboro Teaching Hospital, House surveyed the scene with detached amusement. Abernathy lay unconscious, hooked up to a symphony of beeping machines. His team, Chase, Cameron, and Foreman, hovered around the bed, their faces a mixture of concern and professional curiosity. "So," House drawled, leaning against the doorframe, "Mr. Perfect implodes. What have we got?" Cameron, ever the empathetic one, began. "He had a grand mal seizure, but his vitals are stable now. We're running tests, but preliminary results are unusual." Unusual good, or unusual bad? House pressed, his eyes glinting with anticipation. Foreman, the pragmatic one, stepped forward. Unusual spotless. His blood work is pristine. Cholesterol perfect, liver enzymes textbook. Even his MRI is clear. According to his records, he hasn't had a cold in 5 years. House pushed himself off the doorframe, a smirk playing on his lips. "That's what I find interesting. Nobody is that perfect. There's always something lurking beneath the surface. Let's find out what Mr. Abernathy is hiding." His eyes narrowed, a predatory gleam in them. He knew this case, this puzzle, would be far more complex than it initially seemed. This wasn't just about a seizure, it was about uncovering a carefully constructed lie. House tapped a pen against Abernathy's chart, the rhythmic clicking echoing in the otherwise silent observation room. Perfect vitals after a grand mal? That's not just unusual, that's statistically improbable. It's like winning the lottery and finding a unicorn on the same day. Cameron frowned, adjusting her glasses. Maybe he's just incredibly healthy. Some people are naturally resilient. House scoffed. Resilient? Or meticulously maintained? I bet he flosses after every meal and alphabetizes his vitamins. He gestured towards the chart. Look at this diet. Organic kale smoothies, grass-fed beef, gluten-free everything. It's a lifestyle, not just a diet. A lifestyle meticulously crafted to achieve optimal performance. Foreman, ever the voice of reason, interjected, "We can't just assume he's hiding something because he's healthy, House. We need actual evidence." "Evidence is overrated," House countered, a mischievous glint in his eyes. "Sometimes, you just have to trust your gut. And my gut is screaming that Mr. Abernathy is a fraud. A perfectly polished, high-functioning fraud." Chase, who had been silently reviewing the MRI scans, spoke up. "The MRI is clean. No tumors, no aneurysms, no signs of any neurological damage." "Then we dig deeper," House declared, grabbing his cane. "We need to find out what makes Mr. Perfect tick. What drives him to maintain this impossible level of perfection?" He paused, considering. "Check his medications. See if he's taking anything at all, even over-the-counter stuff. And run a toxicology screen, a really thorough one. I want to know everything that's ever been in this guy's system." As the team dispersed to carry out his orders, House remained in the observation room, staring at the unconscious Abernathy. He saw not a successful lawyer, but a tightly wound spring, ready to snap at any moment. The challenge wasn't just diagnosing the cause of the seizure, it was unraveling the intricate web of lies and self-deception that had led Abernathy to this point. He knew, with a certainty that bordered on arrogance, that the truth was far stranger, and far more interesting, than anyone suspected. The game, as always, was afoot. The toxicology report came back negative. Every single test, from the basic panel to the most esoteric screen, revealed nothing. Abernathy's system was cleaner than a newborn baby's. House tossed the report onto the table, a frustrated sigh escaping his lips. "Unbelievable," he muttered. "The guy's either a saint or a master of deception. And I highly doubt he's auditioning for sainthood." Cameron, ever the optimist, suggested, "Maybe we're wrong, House. Maybe it was just a fluke. A one-time seizure caused by stress or fatigue." "Stress and fatigue don't explain perfect vitals, Cameron," House retorted, his voice laced with impatience. "They explain bags under the eyes and a craving for pizza, not superhuman health." He grabbed his cane and began pacing, his mind racing through possibilities. "We need to look beyond the obvious. What if he's taking something that doesn't show up on standard tests? Something unconventional." Foreman, skeptical but intrigued, chimed in, "Like what? Some kind of experimental drug? A performance-enhancing supplement?" "Exactly," House said, snapping his fingers. "Something that gives him an edge, a competitive advantage. Something that allows him to function at a higher level than the rest of us mere mortals." He stopped pacing and turned to Chase. "Check his office. See if you can find anything suspicious. Any unmarked pills, any strange powders, anything that doesn't belong." "And what am I supposed to say if I get caught?" Chase asked, raising an eyebrow. "Sorry, Mr. Abernathy, I was just rummaging through your desk looking for illegal substances." "Improvise," House shrugged. "Tell him you're looking for his misplaced conscience. Or maybe his sense of humor. Either way, just find something. Anything." As Chase reluctantly headed towards Abernathy's office, House turned back to Cameron and Foreman. "We also need to delve deeper into his medical history. Talk to his family, his friends, his colleagues. See if anyone knows anything we don't. There has to be a crack in this perfect facade, a chink in his armor. And we're going to find it." He paused, a grim smile spreading across his face. "Because everyone has secrets. It's just a matter of knowing where to look." Chase returned from Abernathy's office empty-handed. Nothing. Not a single thing out of place. His desk is as organized as his medical records. I even checked the trash can, just shredded documents and a half-eaten energy bar. House slammed his cane against the floor in frustration. "Damn it. He's good. Too good. This isn't just about being healthy, it's about control. He's controlling every aspect of his life, meticulously curating an image of perfection." Cameron, who had been reviewing Abernathy's medical history again, looked up. "I spoke to his family doctor. He said Abernathy has always been driven, ambitious. He was a straight-A student, captain of the debate team, valedictorian of his class. He's always strived for excellence. Strived for excellence, or terrified of failure?" House countered, his eyes narrowing. "There's a difference. The pressure to maintain that level of success must be immense. What if he's not just trying to be perfect, but trying to avoid something? Trying to outrun something?" Foreman, who had been on the phone, hung up and turned to House. "I spoke to a few of Abernathy's colleagues. They all say the same thing: he's brilliant, dedicated, and incredibly focused. But they also mentioned that he's become increasingly withdrawn and secretive in recent months." "Secretive, huh?" House said, a spark of interest igniting in his eyes. "That's our crack. That's where we start to pry." He paused, considering. "I want you to pull his financial records. Credit card statements, bank accounts, everything. See if he's made any unusual purchases, any trips to obscure locations, anything that doesn't fit the perfect lawyer profile. As Foreman began the process of obtaining Abernathy's financial records, House turned back to the observation room, his gaze fixed on the unconscious lawyer. He was no longer just looking at a patient, he was looking at a puzzle, a challenge, a mystery waiting to be solved. And he knew, with a growing sense of excitement, that the answer was closer than they thought. The truth, as always, was hiding in plain sight, waiting to be uncovered. The game was on, and House was determined to win. Still nothing, Cameron announced, tossing a stack of test results onto the table. We've ruled out every common cause of seizures. No brain tumors, no aneurysms, no signs of epilepsy. His EEG is normal, his spinal fluid is clear. Medically speaking, he should be perfectly fine. House leaned back in his chair, a picture of mock exasperation. So, we have a perfectly healthy lawyer who just spontaneously decided to have a seizure in the middle of a board meeting? That makes perfect sense. His sarcasm dripped like venom. Foreman, ever the pragmatist, sighed. We have to consider the possibility that it was a one-time event. An isolated incident. Maybe it was just bad luck. Bad luck doesn't explain the financial records, House countered, gesturing to a file that Foreman had placed on the table. Take a look at this. Mr. Abernathy has been making regular withdrawals from an ATM located in a rather unsavory part of town. And he's been spending a significant amount of money at a head shop just outside the city limits. Cameron frowned. A head shop? What would a lawyer like Abernathy be doing at a head shop? That's what I intend to find out, House said, a glint in his eyes. Chase, I want you to pay a visit to this head shop. See if you can find out what Abernathy has been buying. Be discreet. Don't let him know you're a doctor. As Chase headed off to investigate the head shop, House turned back to Cameron and Foreman. While Chase is playing detective, I want you to run more tests. Look for anything unusual, anything that we might have missed. I don't care if it's a long shot, I want every stone overturned. He paused, his gaze hardening. Because I'm telling you, there's something wrong with this guy. And we're going to find it, even if it kills us. He smiled, but there was no humor in it. He was a man obsessed, driven by a need to solve the unsolvable, to uncover the hidden truths that lay beneath the surface of every human being. And Mr. Abernathy, with his perfect facade and his secret life, was the perfect target for his relentless curiosity. Chase returned from the head shop, looking slightly uncomfortable. It's exactly what you'd expect, he said, placing a small bag on the table. Pipes, rolling papers, incense, and a few things that are probably illegal in some states. House rummaged through the bag, a smirk playing on his lips. So, Mr. Perfect has a rebellious streak. Interesting. Did you find out what he was buying? The clerk remembered him, Chase replied. Said he always bought the same thing, small vials of a clear liquid. He didn't know what it was, but he said Abernathy always seemed sharper after he bought it. More focused, more articulate. House's eyes lit up. Sharper, more focused. That's our connection. He's using something to enhance his cognitive abilities. Something that gives him an edge in the courtroom. He turned to Cameron and Foreman. Remember what I said about him trying to outrun something? Maybe he's not running from failure, but running toward success. Desperate to achieve something, anything, to justify his existence. But what could it be? Cameron asked, frowning. We've already ruled out most of the common stimulants. And if it's something illegal, why isn't it showing up on the toxicology screen? Because it's not something they typically test for, House replied, a knowing glint in his eyes. Think outside the box. What's a substance that's known to enhance focus and creativity, but is also difficult to detect? He paused, letting the question hang in the air. Foreman's eyes widened. Are you suggesting psychedelics? It's a possibility, House said, shrugging. Microdosing, to be precise. Small doses of LSD or psilocybin, enough to enhance cognitive function without causing hallucinations. It's a growing trend in the tech industry. Why not the legal world? He picked up one of the vials from the bag, examining it closely. This could be our answer. This could be the key to unlocking Mr. Abernathy's secrets. He looked up at his team, a challenge in his eyes. Let's find out if Mr. Perfect is secretly tripping his way to the top. The game, it seemed, had just taken a very interesting turn. Cameron had been tasked with delving into Abernathy's personal life, hoping to find some indication of stress, anxiety, or anything that might explain his reliance on a performance-enhancing substance. She returned with a weary sigh. I interviewed his neighbors, his friends, even his ex-girlfriend, she reported. Everyone says the same thing: he's quiet, reserved, and incredibly disciplined. He works long hours, but he also makes time for exercise and healthy eating. He doesn't drink, doesn't smoke, and as far as anyone knows, he's never even experimented with drugs. House scoffed. So, he's a saint. Again. This is getting tiresome. It's not that simple, Cameron countered. He's also incredibly lonely. His ex-girlfriend said he pushed her away because he was too focused on his career. He doesn't have any close friends, and his family lives out of state. He's essentially isolated himself. Ah, isolation, House mused. The perfect breeding ground for self-deception and secret habits. He's created a fortress of perfection around himself, and he's the only one inside. He paused, considering. Run a hair follicle test. It's more sensitive than a standard urine screen and can detect even trace amounts of drugs, including LSD. As Cameron went to arrange the hair follicle test, Foreman spoke up. Even if he is microdosing, that doesn't necessarily explain the seizure. LSD is generally considered to be safe in small doses. There has to be something else going on. I agree, House said, nodding slowly. The LSD is likely just exacerbating an underlying condition. We need to keep looking for the root cause. He picked up the vial from the head shop again, examining it closely. This is just a piece of the puzzle. There's a bigger picture here, a darker secret that Mr. Abernathy is desperately trying to hide. He looked up at Foreman, a determined glint in his eyes. And we're going to find it, even if it means tearing his perfect world apart piece by piece. The hunt, as always, was far from over. The truth remained elusive, but House was relentless in his pursuit. Just as Cameron returned with the results of the hair follicle test, positive for LSD, Abernathy began to convulse again. This time, it was a smaller seizure, barely noticeable, but enough to send the monitors into a frenzy. House rushed to his bedside, his eyes narrowed. Damn it! The microdosing is clearly triggering something. This isn't just about enhancing his performance, it's about a ticking time bomb. Foreman, ever the cautious one, voiced his concern. We need to be careful, House. The more tests we run, the more risks we take. We could do more harm than good. Harm is a relative term, Foreman, House retorted. We're trying to save his life. And to do that, we need to know what we're dealing with. He turned to Cameron. The LSD confirms my suspicions, but it doesn't explain the seizures. We need to dig deeper. I want a spinal tap. Cameron hesitated. A spinal tap is invasive, House. There are risks involved. We could cause nerve damage, infection. The risk of not knowing is greater, House interrupted. We need to examine his cerebrospinal fluid. See if there's any sign of inflammation, infection, anything that could be triggering these seizures. He paused, his gaze hardening. I know it's risky, but we don't have a choice. Mr. Abernathy is running out of time. As Cameron reluctantly prepared for the spinal tap, House stared down at Abernathy, his mind racing. He was convinced that the key to the puzzle lay hidden within the lawyer's brain, waiting to be unlocked. The LSD was a clue, but it was just one piece of a much larger, more complex puzzle. And House, as always, was determined to solve it, no matter the cost. The stakes were higher now, the pressure was mounting, but his resolve remained unwavering. He was a doctor, a diagnostician, and a seeker of truth. And he wouldn't rest until he had uncovered the secrets that Mr. Abernathy was so desperately trying to keep hidden. The game, it seemed, had just entered a new and dangerous phase. The spinal tap was underway, Cameron's brow furrowed in concentration as she carefully inserted the needle. House paced impatiently, his cane tapping a frantic rhythm against the floor. Foreman, meanwhile, was hunched over a computer, scrutinizing Abernathy's blood work. House, Foreman called out, his voice laced with a hint of excitement. I think I've found something. There are subtle inconsistencies in his electrolyte levels, particularly his sodium and potassium. They're within the normal range, but they fluctuate erratically. House stopped pacing and turned to Foreman, his eyes narrowing. Erratic fluctuations? What does that suggest? It could be a sign of a metabolic disorder, Foreman replied. Something that's interfering with his body's ability to regulate electrolytes properly. It's subtle, easily overlooked, but it could be the key to explaining the seizures. Which metabolic disorder? House pressed, his mind already racing through possibilities. There are hundreds of them. That's the problem, Foreman said, shaking his head. The fluctuations are too subtle to pinpoint a specific disorder. We need to run more tests, more specialized tests, to narrow it down. House nodded slowly, his gaze fixed on the unconscious Abernathy. A metabolic disorder. That would explain a lot. It would explain why his body is reacting so violently to the LSD. It would explain why his blood work is otherwise so perfect. He's been compensating for this disorder his entire life, meticulously controlling his diet and lifestyle to maintain a semblance of normalcy. He paused, a glimmer of understanding in his eyes. The LSD isn't the cause of the problem, it's just the trigger. It's like throwing gasoline on a smoldering fire. As Cameron finished the spinal tap and sent the sample to the lab, House turned back to Foreman. I want you to run every metabolic test you can think of. No matter how obscure, no matter how unlikely. We need to find out what's wrong with this guy, before it's too late. The puzzle, it seemed, was finally starting to come together. The pieces were falling into place, revealing a hidden truth that was far more complex and disturbing than they had initially imagined. The game was far from over, but for the first time, House felt like he was finally gaining the upper hand. House sat beside Abernathy's bed, not running tests or reviewing charts, but simply observing. He watched the rise and fall of Abernathy's chest, the subtle twitch of his fingers, the faint flicker of his eyelids. He was looking for something, anything, that might provide a clue to the underlying metabolic disorder. What are you doing, House? Cameron asked, entering the room. The lab results from the spinal tap won't be back for hours. Thinking, House replied, his gaze never leaving Abernathy's face. Something's not adding up. The electrolyte imbalances are subtle, but the seizures are severe. There has to be a missing piece. Maybe it's just a rare and aggressive form of epilepsy, Cameron suggested. House shook his head. Epilepsy doesn't explain the head shop, the vials, the heightened focus. It doesn't explain the way he presented himself in the boardroom. He wasn't just focused, he was inspired. Almost manic. He paused, remembering the way Abernathy had spoken, the rapid-fire delivery of his ideas, the almost frenetic energy that had radiated from him. He had heightened senses, House continued, his voice barely a whisper. He noticed details that others missed. He connected ideas that seemed unrelated. It was like he was operating on a different plane of existence. Cameron frowned. Are you still thinking about the LSD? It's more than just the LSD, House replied. The LSD is amplifying something that's already there. A natural predisposition for heightened perception, for unusual creativity. He was using it to unlock his full potential, to become the best version of himself. He leaned closer to Abernathy, studying his face. But at what cost? He was playing with fire, pushing his body to its limits. And now, he's paying the price. He stood up, a renewed sense of purpose in his eyes. We need to find out what's broken inside him. We need to find out what makes him tick. Because if we don't, he's going to die. He walked towards the door, his cane tapping a determined rhythm against the floor. The game, it seemed, was far from over. It was just beginning. And House, as always, was ready to play. Abernathy regained consciousness, his eyes fluttering open. He looked around the room, confused and disoriented. House approached his bedside, his expression unreadable. "Mr. Abernathy," House said, his voice calm but firm. "We need to talk about the LSD." Abernathy's eyes widened in alarm. He tried to sit up, but a sharp pain shot through his head. "LSD? What are you talking about? I don't know anything about LSD." "Don't play coy with me," House retorted, his patience wearing thin. "We found traces of LSD in your hair follicles. We know you've been microdosing." Abernathy's face flushed crimson. "That's impossible. I would never. I'm a lawyer. My reputation, my career, it would be ruined." "Your career is already in jeopardy," House countered. "You had a seizure in the middle of a board meeting. We're trying to figure out why. And the LSD is a crucial piece of the puzzle." Cameron stepped forward, her voice gentle. "Mr. Abernathy, we're not trying to judge you. We're trying to help you. But we can't do that if you're not honest with us." "I am being honest." Abernathy insisted, his voice rising in desperation. "I don't take drugs. I've never taken drugs. This is a mistake. A conspiracy." House sighed, his gaze hardening. "We have evidence, Mr. Abernathy. We know you've been buying vials of a clear liquid from a head shop. We know you've been using it to enhance your performance." Abernathy remained silent, his face a mask of denial. He was trapped, caught in a lie that he couldn't escape. His perfect facade was crumbling, revealing the cracks and imperfections that he had so desperately tried to hide. "Look," House said, softening his tone slightly. "We understand the pressure you're under. We know you're trying to achieve something great. But you're putting your life at risk. You need to tell us the truth, so we can help you." Abernathy looked up at House, his eyes filled with fear and desperation. He knew he was cornered, but he couldn't bring himself to admit the truth. His reputation, his career, his entire identity were on the line. He was a man clinging to a lie, even as it threatened to destroy him. The game, it seemed, had reached a critical point. And the stakes were higher than ever before. Even as Abernathy vehemently denied the LSD use, the confirmation was irrefutable. Cameron presented the lab report, a single sheet of paper that held the weight of Abernathy's unraveling reality. "The hair follicle test is positive for LSD," she stated simply, her voice devoid of judgment. House smirked, a flicker of satisfaction in his eyes. "Denial is a powerful drug, Mr. Abernathy. But it's not nearly as powerful as science." Foreman, reviewing the metabolic test results, looked up with a concerned expression. "The spinal tap results are back. There's no sign of infection, but there is evidence of mild brain inflammation." "Brain inflammation," House repeated, his brow furrowing. "That's consistent with the LSD, but it doesn't explain the electrolyte imbalances. There's still something else going on." He turned back to Abernathy, his gaze intense. "We know you're using LSD. We know you have a metabolic disorder. And we know that the combination of the two is causing your brain to swell. If you don't tell us the truth, you're going to suffer permanent brain damage." Abernathy remained silent, his face a battleground of conflicting emotions. Fear, shame, and desperation warred for control, each vying to break through his carefully constructed facade. What are you so afraid of? House pressed, his voice softening slightly. Losing your job. Losing your reputation. Those things are meaningless if you're dead. You need to prioritize your health, Mr. Abernathy. You need to start being honest with yourself. Suddenly, Abernathy's carefully constructed composure cracked. Tears welled up in his eyes, and his voice trembled as he finally spoke. I started using it a few months ago, he confessed, his voice barely a whisper. Just small amounts, to help me focus. To give me an edge. An edge? House repeated, his voice laced with cynicism. Or an addiction? Abernathy looked away, ashamed. I thought I could control it, he admitted. I thought I could stop whenever I wanted to. But I can't. The truth, finally spoken, hung in the air like a heavy weight. The game, it seemed, had finally reached its climax. And the real work, the work of healing, was just beginning. So, House said, leaning back in his chair, his gaze fixed on the ceiling. We have a lawyer who's microdosing LSD to enhance his performance, and a body that's reacting violently to it. The question is, why? Foreman, reviewing the latest metabolic test results, sighed. Still nothing conclusive. The electrolyte imbalances are persistent, but they don't fit any known pattern. That's because it's not a textbook case, House retorted. It's a unique combination of factors, a perfect storm of physiology and self-deception. He has a hidden metabolic disorder, something that's been lurking beneath the surface his entire life. And the LSD is acting as a catalyst, exacerbating the condition and triggering the brain inflammation. But how does the LSD cause brain inflammation? Cameron asked, frowning. It's not a known side effect, especially in such small doses. It's not the LSD itself, House explained. It's the way his body is processing it. His metabolic disorder is interfering with the breakdown of the drug, causing a buildup of toxic metabolites in his brain. These metabolites are triggering an inflammatory response, leading to the seizures. He stood up and began pacing, his cane tapping a frantic rhythm against the floor. It's like an allergic reaction, but on a cellular level. His brain is rejecting the LSD, viewing it as a foreign invader. And the more he takes, the worse the inflammation becomes. He stopped pacing and turned to Abernathy, his expression serious. You need to stop taking the LSD, Mr. Abernathy. Immediately. It's killing you. Abernathy nodded, his eyes filled with fear and remorse. I know, he whispered. I just don't know how to stop. We can help you with that, Cameron said, her voice gentle. But first, we need to identify the metabolic disorder. We need to understand what's broken inside you, so we can fix it. House turned back to Foreman, his gaze hardening. We need to run more tests, Foreman. More specialized tests. We need to find the genetic marker, the enzyme deficiency, the hidden flaw that's causing all of this. The game, it seemed, had entered a new and even more challenging phase. The clock was ticking, and Abernathy's life hung in the balance. And House, as always, was determined to find the answer, no matter the cost. Abernathy, finally broken, confessed the truth. The carefully constructed walls of his perfect world had crumbled, leaving him exposed and vulnerable. It started small, he said, his voice barely audible. Just a few micrograms, to help me focus during long hours. To help me think outside the box, to come up with creative solutions. Creative solutions? House scoffed. Or desperate attempts to stay ahead of the game. Both, Abernathy admitted, his eyes filled with shame. The pressure, it's immense. The competition is fierce. Everyone is trying to outdo each other, to climb to the top. And I felt like I was falling behind. He paused, his voice trembling. I've always been driven, ambitious. I've always strived for excellence. But lately, it's like I can't keep up. I can't think fast enough, I can't work hard enough. I felt like I needed something to give me an edge, something to help me stay competitive. And you thought LSD was the answer? Cameron asked, her voice filled with concern. I thought I could control it, Abernathy replied. I thought I could use it responsibly, to enhance my performance without becoming addicted. But I was wrong. It took over my life. It became a crutch, a necessity. He looked up at House, his eyes pleading. I know it was stupid. I know it was dangerous. But I didn't know what else to do. I was desperate. I was afraid of failing. House sighed, his expression softening slightly. Fear is a powerful motivator, Mr. Abernathy. But it can also lead you down a dangerous path. You need to learn to accept your limitations, to embrace your imperfections. You can't rely on artificial enhancements to achieve success. True success comes from within. He turned back to Foreman, his gaze hardening. The confession changes nothing. We still need to find the metabolic disorder. We still need to understand what's causing his brain inflammation. The LSD is just a symptom of a much deeper problem. The game, it seemed, was far from over. Abernathy's confession had provided a glimpse into his inner turmoil, but it hadn't solved the medical mystery. And House, as always, was determined to find the answer, no matter how elusive it might be. The team plunged into a whirlwind of complex testing, each new result leading to more questions than answers. Foreman, fueled by caffeine and a relentless determination, pored over genetic markers, enzyme levels, and metabolic pathways, searching for the elusive anomaly. We've ruled out dozens of possibilities, he announced, his voice weary. But the electrolyte imbalances persist, and we're no closer to identifying the underlying cause. House, pacing impatiently, slammed his cane against the floor. We're missing something obvious. Something that's staring us right in the face. Cameron, reviewing Abernathy's medical history, looked up with a concerned expression. I spoke to his mother. She mentioned that he had a severe reaction to anesthesia as a child. He developed a high fever and became extremely agitated. A reaction to anesthesia? House repeated, his eyes narrowing. That could be a clue. Some metabolic disorders can make patients extremely sensitive to certain medications. He turned to Foreman, his gaze hardening. I want you to run a test for malignant hyperthermia susceptibility. It's a rare genetic disorder that can cause a life-threatening reaction to anesthesia. That test is incredibly invasive, Foreman protested. It requires a muscle biopsy. There's a risk of infection, bleeding, and nerve damage. The risk of not knowing is greater, House retorted. We need to rule out every possibility, no matter how unlikely. Abernathy's brain inflammation is getting worse. If we don't find the cause soon, he's going to suffer permanent damage. As Foreman reluctantly prepared for the muscle biopsy, House stared down at Abernathy, his mind racing. He was convinced that the answer was close, just beyond their reach. But the clock was ticking, and the stakes were higher than ever before. The game, it seemed, had reached a critical point. And the fate of Mr. Abernathy, the perfect lawyer with a hidden addiction and a broken body, hung in the balance. The pressure was mounting, but House remained undeterred. He was a doctor, a diagnostician, and a seeker of truth. And he wouldn't rest until he had found the answer, no matter the cost. The muscle biopsy came back negative. Abernathy did not have malignant hyperthermia susceptibility. The team was back to square one, their hope dwindling with each passing hour. Abernathy's brain inflammation continued to worsen, threatening permanent neurological damage. We're running out of time, House, Cameron said, her voice filled with concern. We need to do something, anything, to stop the inflammation. I know, House replied, his expression grim. I've been reviewing the literature. There's a treatment that might work, but it's risky. It involves using high doses of corticosteroids to suppress the immune system and reduce the inflammation. Corticosteroids? Foreman protested. That could have serious side effects. It could weaken his immune system, making him vulnerable to infections. It could also cause psychosis, osteoporosis, even adrenal insufficiency. I know the risks, House retorted. But we don't have a choice. The inflammation is spreading rapidly. If we don't act soon, he's going to die. He turned to Abernathy, his gaze intense. Mr. Abernathy, we have a treatment that might save your life. But it's not without risks. It could have serious side effects, even permanent ones. Are you willing to take the chance? Abernathy looked up at House, his eyes filled with fear and uncertainty. He was caught between a rock and a hard place, forced to choose between a certain death and a potentially debilitating treatment. What are my options? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. Your options are limited, House replied. We can do nothing, and you will die. Or we can try the corticosteroids, and hope for the best. Abernathy closed his eyes, his face a mask of despair. He had spent his entire life striving for perfection, only to find himself facing an impossible choice. The game, it seemed, had reached its ultimate climax. And the fate of Mr. Abernathy, the perfect lawyer with a hidden addiction and a broken body, now rested in his own hands. The decision was his, and his alone. The pressure was immense, but he had to choose. He had to decide whether he was willing to risk everything to save his life. Time seemed to slow as Abernathy wrestled with his decision. The silence in the room was thick with tension, broken only by the rhythmic beeping of the monitors. Finally, he spoke, his voice weak but resolute. Before I decide, I need to ask myself something. Was it worth it? He closed his eyes, his mind replaying the events of his life. The long hours, the sleepless nights, the relentless pursuit of success. The sacrifices he had made, the relationships he had sacrificed, all in the name of ambition. I pushed everyone away, he whispered, his voice filled with remorse. My family, my friends, my girlfriend. I was so focused on my career, on achieving something great, that I lost sight of what really mattered. He paused, his eyes filling with tears. I thought that success would bring me happiness, that it would fill the void inside me. But it didn't. It just made me more empty, more alone. He looked up at House, his gaze filled with a profound sadness. I spent my entire life chasing a dream, only to realize that it was a lie. I sacrificed everything for a goal that was ultimately meaningless. He closed his eyes again, his face a mask of despair. If I die, he whispered, then all of it was for nothing. All of the hard work, all of the sacrifices, it was all a waste. House watched him, his expression unreadable. He had seen this before, the moment of reckoning, the realization that the pursuit of success had come at a terrible price. He knew that Abernathy was facing a difficult decision, a choice that would determine the course of his life. It's not too late to change things, Cameron said, her voice gentle. You can still find meaning in your life, even if you don't achieve all of your ambitions. Abernathy opened his eyes, a flicker of hope igniting within them. Maybe you're right, he said, his voice barely a whisper. Maybe it's not too late. He took a deep breath, his gaze hardening with resolve. I'll take the treatment, he said. I'll take the chance. I want to live. I want to have a chance to make things right. The game, it seemed, had taken an unexpected turn. Abernathy had made his decision, not out of a desire for success, but out of a desperate hope for redemption. And the real journey, the journey of healing and self-discovery, was just beginning. The corticosteroids were administered, and the waiting began. The team monitored Abernathy's vitals around the clock, watching for any sign of improvement or, more worryingly, any sign of the dreaded side effects. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, Abernathy's condition began to improve. The brain inflammation subsided, his seizures stopped, and he regained consciousness. But the relief was short-lived. He's developing a fever, Cameron announced, her voice filled with concern. And his white blood cell count is dropping. He's developing an infection. Damn it! House exclaimed, slamming his cane against the floor. The corticosteroids are weakening his immune system. He's vulnerable to everything. Foreman, reviewing the lab results, looked up with a grim expression. It's not just any infection, House. It's pneumocystis pneumonia. It's rare, but it's deadly in immunocompromised patients. We need to act fast, House said, his mind racing. We need to start him on antibiotics immediately. And we need to find a way to boost his immune system, without counteracting the effects of the corticosteroids. He turned to Cameron, his gaze intense. I want you to start him on trimethoprim sulfamethoxazole for the pneumonia. And I want you to consult with an immunologist. See if there's anything we can do to support his immune system without making things worse. As Cameron rushed to carry out his orders, House turned back to Abernathy, his expression unreadable. He had saved him from the brain inflammation, only to unleash a new and equally deadly threat. The game, it seemed, was far from over. Abernathy's life was still hanging in the balance, and the team was facing a new and even more challenging obstacle. The clock was ticking, and the pressure was mounting. But House, as always, remained undeterred. He was a doctor, a diagnostician, and a fighter. And he wouldn't give up until he had won the battle, no matter the cost. The fate of Mr. Abernathy, the perfect lawyer with a hidden addiction and a broken body, now depended on his skill, his determination, and a little bit of luck. A few days later, Abernathy was stable, recovering from the pneumonia. He was weak, but alive. House sat alone in his office, a glass of scotch in his hand, reflecting on the case. Cameron entered the office, her expression thoughtful. He's lucky to be alive, House. It was a close call. Luck had nothing to do with it, House retorted. It was skill, determination, and a healthy dose of cynicism. Maybe, Cameron said, smiling slightly. But I think he learned something from this experience. He realized that his ambition had blinded him to what really mattered. House took a sip of his scotch, his gaze fixed on the window. Appearances can be deceiving, he said, his voice barely a whisper. Mr. Abernathy presented himself as the picture of perfection, but beneath the surface, he was a mess. A broken man, driven by fear and self-doubt. He was pushing himself too hard, Cameron added. He thought he needed to be perfect to be successful. But he was wrong. He was sacrificing his health, his relationships, everything, in pursuit of an impossible goal. House nodded slowly, his expression softening slightly. The pursuit of perfection is a fool's errand, he said. It's a never-ending cycle of self-criticism and disappointment. The key is to accept your limitations, to embrace your imperfections. To find happiness in the present moment, rather than chasing a distant dream. He paused, his gaze hardening. But that doesn't mean we should stop striving to improve ourselves. It just means we should do it for the right reasons. Not out of fear, or desperation, but out of a genuine desire to be better. To be more compassionate, more understanding, more human. He finished his scotch, his mind already drifting to the next case, the next puzzle, the next opportunity to uncover the hidden truths that lay beneath the surface of every human being. The game, it seemed, never truly ended. And House, as always, was ready to play. Abernathy's recovery was slow and arduous. He faced a long road ahead, both physically and emotionally. The pneumonia had weakened him, and the corticosteroids had left him with a host of unpleasant side effects. But the greatest challenge he faced was rebuilding his life without relying on the artificial enhancements that had become his crutch. He began attending therapy sessions, confronting his addiction and exploring the underlying issues that had driven him to microdose in the first place. He reconnected with his family, mending the broken relationships that he had neglected for so long. He even started volunteering at a local community center, finding purpose and meaning in helping others. It's not easy, he told Cameron during one of her follow-up visits. I still have moments of doubt, moments of temptation. But I'm learning to cope with those feelings, to find strength within myself, rather than relying on external substances. You're making progress, Cameron said, smiling encouragingly. It takes courage to confront your demons and to make such significant changes in your life. Abernathy nodded, his eyes filled with a quiet determination. I'm not the same person I was before, he said. I've lost my job, my reputation, everything that I thought was important. But I've gained something even more valuable, self-awareness, humility, and a genuine appreciation for life. He paused, his gaze hardening with resolve. I don't know what the future holds, he said. But I'm determined to make the most of it. I'm determined to live a life that is authentic, meaningful, and free from addiction. The game, it seemed, had taken a new and unexpected turn. Abernathy was no longer striving for perfection, but for redemption. And his journey, the journey of healing and self-discovery, was just beginning. He still had a long way to go, but he was finally on the right path. A path that led not to success, but to something far more valuable, true happiness and inner peace. Back in the diagnostic office, the faint scent of disinfectant hung in the air. House was already hunched over a new file, his brow furrowed in concentration. The whiteboard behind him was covered in a chaotic jumble of medical jargon, flow charts, and seemingly random doodles. Cameron entered the office, a weary but satisfied smile on her face. He's going to be okay, House. Abernathy is finally on the mend. Good for him, House replied, his gaze never leaving the file. Now, about this new case. Don't you ever take a break? Cameron asked, shaking her head in amusement. Breaks are for the weak, House retorted, his lips curling into a cynical grin. Besides, this one's a real head-scratcher. A teenage girl who suddenly started speaking in tongues. No medical history, no obvious cause. The parents think she's possessed. He paused, his eyes gleaming with a mixture of amusement and intrigue. Possessed or just plain crazy? That's the question. He tapped the file with his cane, his gaze hardening with determination. I want you to run every test you can think of, Cameron. Rule out everything from brain tumors to drug overdoses to, well, actual possession. Cameron sighed, but there was a hint of a smile in her eyes. You never change, do you, House? Change is overrated, House said, shrugging. Besides, someone has to be the voice of reason in this world. Someone has to be willing to challenge the status quo, to question the accepted norms, to uncover the hidden truths that everyone else is too afraid to see. He looked up at Cameron, his expression softening slightly. And sometimes, just sometimes, we even manage to save a life along the way. He turned back to the file, his mind already consumed by the new puzzle. The game, it seemed, never truly ended. There were always new mysteries to solve, new challenges to overcome, new opportunities to push the boundaries of medicine and to challenge the limits of human understanding. And House, as always, was ready to play, with a cynical heart and a brilliant mind. The camera pans out, leaving House alone in his office, a solitary figure in a world of uncertainty and deception. The final shot lingers on the whiteboard, a chaotic tapestry of medical knowledge and human fallibility, a reminder that even the most brilliant minds can only scratch the surface of the infinite mysteries that lie within the human body and the human soul. The end.